Welcome to Horror in Detail. Are you ready to embark on a chilling journey into the realms of darkness? The mysterious and the bone-chilling world of horror stories. On this channel, we are dedicated to unraveling the most terrifying tales that will send shivers down your spine. First story. This story was shared by you/traditional Tal. We survived a Wendigo attack. I'm happy to see others also had these experiences. It's a bit like group therapy in a very twisted way, I guess. This isn't an AA meeting or anything. Years ago, when I was fresh out of high school, me and my friends went for a camping trip. Since it'd be the last time we saw each other before college sent us on our separate ways. We had planned to go deep into the national forest in the mountains and just enjoy ourselves for a few weeks. My friends who came along were Preston, a Native American who had several years of survivalist strategies under his belt. Jamie, a hunting and gun enthusiast like me, with a propensity for adventure. Mark, Preston's friend, not so much mine. He smoked a lot of drugs and seemed to be okay, but I was always on edge around him. With us we packed 2 tents, dried fruit, rice, jerky, camping supplies, and beer, along with a Mini 14 rifle A Saiga, 12 shotgun 2 pistols, my Taurus Judge revolver, and Jamie's .357 revolver. We packed all of this into my battered BMW station wagon, with me being the driver. Stopping at a car park, we loaded up our gear on our backs and began going deep into the forest. The first day was uneventful. Preston found a good clearing for us to settle at. We set down our gear and set up the tents while Preston got to work with the cook fire. I was always good at setting up tents, so this wasn't a problem for me. Within 20 minutes, we had set up the basics of camp. I cracked open a beer and sat next to Preston, who had created a roaring fire. I smiled at him. "I'm gonna miss you, man." I patted his back. "Me too. Let's enjoy this," he responded. Jamie and Mark were carrying on, exploring the surrounding area. At the time, I could have sworn I saw a pair of green eyes and antlers looking at me. I would come to regret not asking Preston in the coming days. I tried to forget as we sat down to dinner that night. Campfire curry, a mix of curry spices, frozen chicken we brought and prepared, and a few vegetables, along with a small pot of rice. As it was the first night, we ate all of our perishables. It was tasty for sure. Then, like we were kids once again, we roasted marshmallows and made s'mores. It was truly a very fun time for sure. If only it would have lasted. That night was uneventful as well. I slept like a baby, and Preston, whom I shared a tent with, didn't seem to be bothered at all. The next morning, we packed up camp and decided to head south towards a large river with the intent of spending a few nights riverside. As we were in the remote wilderness, I handed Preston my Mini 14, and I myself carried the Saiga 12. Slugs and buckshot alternated in its 10-round magazine. Jamie kept his .357, and I had my sidearm as well. We walked for what seemed like hours. The mistiness, overcast weather, and lack of clear landmarks required we rely on GPS and compasses. As we headed south, I saw the look on Preston's face. He looked worried. "Preston, what's up, man?" I asked him. He had me get close, and he whispered, "I dunno, man. I got a feeling that a bad omen is about to pass. Keep everyone in sight. I'll listen for anything." As he said that, we heard what sounded like a distant whooping noise. All of us looked around. In the distance behind us, I could have sworn I saw something shambling. It was too far to shoot with my shotgun, so I pointed at it and told Preston to shoot. "Shoot that thing." 3 shots from the Mini 14, and the smell of freshly fired ammunition filled my nostrils. Whatever it was got down on all fours and bounded away. "What was that?" Mark asked, shocked. Preston swore up and down in his native language before he finally said that, "My friends, is something truly evil. We need to hurry to the river." We ran for about 30 minutes, our pace slowed by the amount of heavy gear we carried. Preston looked from side to side, but found nothing as he did so. Soon, we reached the rushing river, and with that the fog seemed to dissipate. Preston looked around, shook his head, looked at his GPS, and finally said, "The other side of the national forest is available to us across a hand tram a mile upstream. We can make it there before lunchtime if we hurry." "Preston, what's going on? What was that thing?" Jamie asked, concerned. "I can't be sure, but it's nothing good. I want to try and lose it across the tramway. Whatever that thing is, if it's anything like my family stories, it won't ford a river. We're going. That's final." Preston led the way upriver, keeping close to the shoreline. Eventually, we did find it. A large steel and wood car suspended over a wide expanse of river. I got in first and wasted no time getting across. I watched the trail on the other side while Jamie went across next with some of the extra gear. And then finally Preston and Mark squeezed into the tram and got across. As I turned to leave, I saw Preston take out his Bowie and he began hacking at the rope suspending the tram. "What the fuck are you doing, man? That's state property. That's a felony," I said, bewildered. "We can't have that thing follow us." He hacked at the rope until it snapped and the tram car fell with a loud clang into the river below. As we left and started heading east, I could have sworn I saw those green eyes again, but just for a moment, watching us. We made camp at a clearing on the edge of a hill's wide ridge. It gave us great views and visibility, but more importantly, as Preston stated, we can see anyone or anything coming. As he sat and made the fire, he said, "We're doing watch rotations. That thing, I am genuinely afraid of it. I bet it's just a bear, Preston. Too many family stories." Mark guffawed. As I said previously, he was Preston's, not my, friend. I took the second watch after Preston cooked a meal of rice pudding. I had no trouble staying up. Then Jamie. I sat up and talked with him for a while. He worried a little, and he expressed that he wanted to go home. "I know what you mean, dude. This is too creepy." Mark took the last watch, my shotgun propped up next to the tent in case he needed it. Or so Jamie told me. When we got up the next morning, Mark had disappeared. Immediately, we questioned Jamie, whose story checked out. He saw Mark up and watching. We waited, Preston reigniting the few vapors. He also pulled out a small can of pine tar and began making torches. "What are they for, Preston?" Jamie asked. "I'm sure of it. We've got a Wendigo." Preston replied. "A Wendigo? The fuck is that?" I replied. "A cannibalistic demon with green eyes, a deer skull for a head, and a thirst for human blood. They're also like skinwalkers, you know, like in True Blood. At the time, the TV show was popular." He explained. "I became very scared, so that grabbed Mark and ate him. We'll wait for Mark for a few hours. Keep the guns locked and loaded. Do not let him approach within 200 feet of the campsite. I'm going out for a bit." "You're crazy, Preston," I protested. He whispered in my ear, "When I come back, ask me my favorite sailor. It's Saturn, for the record." He then approached Jamie and told him something that I knew I wasn't supposed to hear. Then he grabbed 2 torches, his knife, and he turned back to us. "Wendigo do not like fire. Keep the fire going. There's plenty of sticks and wood right there for a few hours. I'll be back. Do not forget what I told each of you. If I can't answer it when I come back, shoot me." As he disappeared into the forest, I sat with Jamie, back to back. He had my Saiga. I had my Mini 14. For hours, we heard various sounds in the forest, including those whooping noises, the sound of what sounded like Mark, and what I thought was the sound of a distantly beating drum. By afternoon, we heard rustling in the forest, and none other than Preston returned, dirt smeared on his face, and a makeshift drum under his arm, with 1 torch left. He stopped short of the campsite when I raised my gun at him. "What's this about, guys?" "It's me, Preston," he said. "What is your favorite Final Fantasy protagonist?" Jamie asked. "Squall, of course." Jamie lowered his gun. "What is your favorite sailor?" I asked slowly and deliberately. "Saturn, of course." "I suppose this means Mark is still missing." "Yes," he responded. I lowered my gun and said, "Come on up, dude." And yeah, we heard whooping noises but no sign. Preston averted his gaze. "It's hunting us." I confirmed the tracks, and my little serenade in tribal chants caused it to at one point come and look at me. "How did you get away?" I asked. "I chased it with fire. They're afraid of it, remember?" He responded. "Do guns harm them?" I asked slowly. "It can injure them, but you really need fire or silver. We only have fire, as usual. We're going to burn one of the tents and drop some gear. We're going light. We're heading to the highway. It's 35 miles to the east, but we can get there over 2 days. But we'll need to double our night rotations. And if you see anything that looks like Mark, he's dead, guys." "I'm sure of it," Preston responded. I was very afraid at this point. The sinking feeling that my idea could have gotten everyone killed. I took charge. "We will do 15 miles today and 20 tomorrow. We will hitch a ride back to the car. We'll burn our trash as we move. We'll burn the tent tomorrow morning. Let's go, now." We hastily packed what we could carry and burned much of our non-essentials. We hurried throughout the afternoon and early evening, running when we could and walking as quickly as we could. The whooping call continued to seem to follow us at a distance. I didn't, however, see antlers or green eyes when I looked back. Eventually, we found a clearing that was decently sized, had good visibility and sticks. We hastily gathered firewood, all staying as a group, and we pitched camp. That dinner was cold jerky and dried fruit. Preston was unwilling to attract attention from smells, but he did create several pine tar torches and set them at the outskirts. We didn't say a word, but me and Preston took the first watch. Then Jamie and Preston, then me and Jamie. This continued every 2 hours until the daytime. As day broke, we heard screaming. Mark's voice came from the woods crying for help. Preston shook his head. It got him. We can't do anything about it. We burned the tent and continued traveling throughout the day. I could see it today, though. It didn't bother to hide itself by noon. The Wendigo was about 7 feet tall. Its limbs were blackened, 2 glowing green eyes set into a deer skull with antlers. Soft whooping noises. It kept its distance. I pulled my revolver and aimed at it about 250 feet away. Firing, I hit it in the chest. It barely flinched. The thing turned and stared at me. Preston began to shout at it aggressively in his native language. It stopped, tilted its head, and then responded to him. I asked him, "What the hell did he say to you?" I asked him what he did with Mark. He responded, "Who's that?" Preston then grabbed my Mini 14 and fired repeatedly at him. This abomination seemed to get annoyed. I followed up with a well-placed slug to the chest from my Saiga. It howled in pain and dashed away into the woods. "We better run, I think," I remarked to the group. We ran for a good 20 minutes when suddenly, in a clearing ahead of us, was a human silhouette. Naked, filthy. "Guys, it's me. You gotta take me back. I escaped that thing and have been running from it for the last day." It was Mark. I pointed my Saiga at Mark. "What happened to your clothes, Mark?" "Yeah, and if you're Mark, tell us the name of the school we went to," Preston said. He pointed the rifle at his head. "Come on, guys, don't play around. It's me. I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I want to go home," he protested. Jamie shoot him in the leg with his revolver. Mark screamed in pain. "Unless you want the next to be your head, answer the fucking questions," Jamie shouted. That's when Mark's head snapped to Jamie in a grossly unnatural fashion. I was paralyzed by fear as it appeared as if Mark was contorting and screaming in unnatural tones. I fired, repeatedly, all remaining shells in the magazine. It just seemed to shred the upper skin. Putting that on my back, I remembered, Wendigos hate fire. I grabbed my lighter and a can of bug spray, and I dashed at the thing that was once Mark. spraying it with the fire from my makeshift flamethrower. As I burned it, Preston laid down 2 entire magazines into it and then dumped the rest of his pine tar on it, and Jamie emptied his revolver. When it finally stopped screaming and moving, we were left with a mutilated and charred corpse, half Mark, half Wendigo. We all threw up. Preston began to butcher its corpse and said, "I've got to destroy the corpse. It's only right that I do this." For an hour, Preston burned and cut up the corpse, then cut the heart out. He put it in a plastic bag and then shoved it into his jacket. It took us another few hours to reach the highway. Preston sat and began to cry on the sidewalk as Jamie kept a hitchhiker thumb out. I sat next to him and asked, "What are you going to do with the heart?" "I have to take it to the reservation. There, my elders have to know these things are still out there. And we need to protect those from these monsters. He clenched his fist. "I'll wipe them out by myself if I have to." For Mark. By evening, a sympathetic farmer stopped and let us ride his bed into town. From there I paid for a cheap motel room, where we breathed a few sighs of relief. The next day, we returned to my car. Thankfully, it started, and we left the area around the forest easily. I didn't talk to Preston for several weeks after that. He eventually showed up at my house during the summer and asked my father if he could stay the night. At the time, I still was living at home. My dad obliged. Preston told me that the elders were shocked and told him that they'd amass a party and take care of it. They came back with the skull of 2 Wendigos and 6 hearts. They also found scraps of Mark's t-shirt, surrounded by a pile of decaying gore. To this day, Preston, Jamie, and me have had a pact to never tell anyone about the horror we witnessed. I only break this pact now, years later, and because we can safely say that this is behind us for the present. My advice: if you hear whooping noises and see green eyes and antlers, run or fight it with fire. Guns can cause it pain, but only fire or silver can kill it. I pray that the abominations are wiped out one day, but I know in my heart that won't happen. Be safe, everyone. Second story. This story was shared by you/Philip612. I think I saw a Wendigo through the train window. It is as the title states. I am fairly certain that I saw a Wendigo out the window of the train. If that were the only event that happened, then I wouldn't have any reason to tell my story. In order to get into what happened, let me start off at the beginning of my day. It was a normal Saturday as far as I was concerned. I stayed up until about 3 a.m. playing the newest online mobile game with my brothers. Yes, I know, it is considered a sin to cheat by using my brother's screens to determine who the imposter is, but I'm not getting into that debate right now. I woke up not too long after 9 a.m., played on my phone a while, and then hopped out of bed, threw on the same clothes I had on the day before, and headed downstairs to the kitchen. I threw together my favorite breakfast food while my brothers both groggily dragged their feet to meet me. My twin brother, Gabe, decided to shower to wake himself up, while my younger brother, Zach, decided to partake in the feast of homemade waffles with peanut butter and chocolate milk. By the time Gabe was dressed and sitting at the kitchen table, Zach and I had already finished putting the dishes into our dishwasher and cleaned off the table. I had packed in advance and my train wasn't for a few more hours, so my brothers and I had pulled our phones out and began terrorizing the servers of Among Us for a little while. After we grew tired from the online insults and cyberbullying that we received for cheating, we played some Mortal Kombat on our PS4. It was a very relaxing morning, all things considered. As I prepared to collect my luggage and leave for the train station, I reiterated the food plans to my siblings. The roast is in the slow cooker. All you'll have to do is clean up. It is going to be finished at 6 today, and if you aren't sure if it's done, then shoot me a picture. I continued speaking over my Gabe's attempts of assuring me that they'd be fine without me. Remember, tomorrow is oven-baked chicken fingers and fries. After school Monday is burgers, and you can order anything you want for Tuesday and pay a tip. I rushed my sentence as Gabe held the front door of our tiny rented house open for me. Chrissy, we'll be fine, okay? Chill out, okay? Gabe chuckled to himself. You're right. You'll be fine. Do your homework. I love you guys. See you Wednesday. I called to them as I headed down the paved driveway and towards the bus stop down the road. Hasta la vista, baby. As Zach yelled my favorite movie reference of all time at me, I couldn't help but smile. They'll be fine. I raised them well, I thought to myself. I looked at them waving in the open front door and gave them a very flat and stern expression. I'll be back. I deepened my voice as best as possible before smiling and heading back towards the bus stop. My parents were extremely busy people all our lives. Gabe was born with a learning disability and required more attention from my parents than I needed. I had to grow up and mature faster to be able to take care of Gabe, as our mother was a full-time principal in our local school and a part-time student tutor, while my father worked as a warehouse manager full-time and was often working the midnight shifts. He worked those shifts due to the employees' reputations to be unproductive. He always said he needed to straighten them out. My father would sleep all day and my mother would work all day. I would always prepare Gabe's lunches and walk him to school, walk him home, and make him dinner. I helped him with his homework. I read him bedtime stories. I tucked him into bed. I was always there for him. Zach was born a week before my 9th birthday with Gabe. By now, Gabe had quickly matured, surprising everyone. He was potentially even smarter and more socially acceptable than I was, though he didn't have the same parenting skills that I had developed and therefore wasn't entirely confident in even turning on an oven or setting a microwave timer. Anyways, by the time Zach came around, I was well aware that I'd have to raise him too. I so desperately wanted my mom and dad to be real parents for little Zach, to be there for him and be what Gabe and I never had. But I knew deep down inside that that wouldn't happen. By the time I was Gabe and I were 18 and Zach had just turned 9, the three of us moved out and into our own apartment. I wasn't even sure that our parents would notice Zach's absence, to be honest. They had no issues with us all moving in together. They said to me themselves that they knew Zach was better off with us than them. They said he was never supposed to be, which entirely angered me. Because of this, Gabe and I started to call Zach our miracle brother. Despite our age gap, the three of us were extremely close with one another. It was us three against the world. Nobody would change that. Then about a year ago, I fell in love with my old high school crush. His name is Brian. We were always close friends since grade 9, but as high school came to a close and we parted ways for university, we confessed our love. It was a very corny movie moment to me. Even through long distance, we made our relationship work. Gabe and Zach were obviously jealous that Brian was taking all of my attention. They were afraid that Brian was going to take me away from them. All that aside, they liked my boyfriend. They were all friendly and had good laughs together. They were happy for us. So here I am, at the train station awaiting my train to my boyfriend on our first-year anniversary. I anxiously awaited the train, wondering with me when I got back. Maybe they were mad already. Or maybe they aren't upset at all. I talked myself into thinking that I was doing the right thing, even though my stomach was turning violently. I was feeling very nauseous. It had nothing to do with anything I ate. I had a horrible feeling. Something inside me was telling me that something bad was going to happen. I didn't listen to it at the time. I thought it was all just the nerves of traveling. I was just too excited to see Brian. The train was quite long. It went from my small little town of southern Ontario to the northern and frigid climate that is stereotypically portrayed as all of Canada. Overall, the trip to Brian's apartments was close to 12 hours, however, that includes the train ride along with the bus and the drive that Brian has to take from his apartment to where I arrive on the train and back to his apartment. I had boarded the train and been seated when one of the train staff members asked to scan my ticket. I quickly apologized for not being prepared and dug through my luggage to find my ticket. After ensuring that I was settled and asking if I had wanted any food or drink for the ride, the staff member had moved along down the aisle. I looked around the car, noticing only 3 other passengers before pulling out my laptop from my bag and popping my headphones into my ears. I sent a text to my parents informing them of my absence from my hometown for the next few days and threw on some YouTube. Gaming channels were always a favorite, but recently Gabe had gotten me hooked onto a game theory channel. I could sit there for hours watching the different conspiracy theories about video game lore, and for the first half of my trip, that's exactly what I did. The early winter sunset filled the skies with orange and pink highlights as I had decided to put my laptop away and watch the window with my music playlist on. I had always enjoyed listening to music on long trips, especially across the country. I tried to imagine cheesy movie scenes taking place in the open fields with slow songs playing and faceless couples slow dancing. Within about an hour after I first peered out my window, the snow had begun. At first, it was a light flurry, hardly visible as the train sped along the tracks. Eventually, it was blizzarding. Simply looking outside gave me chills, as I never enjoyed being in the snow. Snow is pretty, but from afar, I'd always say. I shivered underneath my thick leather jacket as the train came to a slow stop in a remote northern town. This was not my stop, as the train station itself was visibly the largest building in the entire town. Anyone could stand on one end of the town and see the other side down the road, even in the blizzard-like conditions that were present. As the train waited, I kept my eyes focused outside my window. No passengers had left the car, and no additional passengers had boarded. I found this to be very strange, as the train needed to always stay on schedule. Little time was available for simply stopping. There must have been something wrong with one of the employees or the conductor, or possibly even the train itself. Attention passengers, we apologize for the delay. We will continue on our trip in 5 minutes. Once again, we apologize for the delay. We thank you for choosing to ride with us and enjoy your evening. The overhead speakers broke through my thoughts and pulled me back into reality. I simply looked around the car for a moment and then texted Brian to let him know of the 5-minute delay. When I looked back outside my window again was when I saw it. The tall figure was hunched over and with its back towards me. I could see the back of its white skull and its antlers broken and distorted. It was extremely frail, its limbs impossibly long and spindly. The creature was in the tree line across the town. Hardly any specific details were noticeably through the extreme snow. However, I recognized right away the creature. Doubt it settled in almost as fast as the creature seemed to appear. Has it always been there? Was my mind playing tricks on me? It became more and more obvious the longer I gawked at it. How had I not noticed it until now? What the hell? I whispered under my breath. At the moment, I was so quiet that I wasn't even sure I had said it out loud. Just as soon as I questioned, the creature whirled its head at a near 180-degree angle to face me. The black pits for eyes stared deep into my soul. This creature had heard me, and now this creature had seen me. I was sure of it. Its mouth unhinged and an animal's corpse fell out, blood spilling everywhere. Whatever this creature had been consuming was too mangled to determine what it really was. The train jolted to life and crawled across the tracks, gradually gaining speed. I was startled from the sudden movement and jumped nearly out of my seat. The creature only stared as I sped off. I scrambled to get my laptop out of my bag and reconnect it to the train's Wi-Fi. I spent the last 2.5 hours of my trip researching the creature. This is where I had learned of its name, Wendigo. This creature had been a part of native folklore for many generations. I nearly couldn't hold my dinner, and when I read about the stories of cannibals becoming Wendigos hundreds of years ago, after reading other people's close encounters online, I was more and more convinced that what I saw was real. I was ready to move on and forget about my encounter with the Wendigo by the time I stepped off the train. I practically fell into Brian's arms and broke down, a mixture of fear and emotions of sadness and loneliness overtaking me all at once. I was grateful to be there with him, in his arms when I needed him most. I told him about my encounter with the cryptid on the drive back to his apartment. I believe that you definitely saw something, he began, his doubt unintentionally present in his voice. I just don't believe that a creature like that exists is all. Like, how come the only solid proof of its existence are tall tales and folklore? I don't know, Brian. I quietly looked to my feet. He reached one of his hands off the wheel and held mine firmly and reassuringly. I don't know what it is, I guess. It feels real to me. Well, that's good enough for me, he said calmly. That's enough reason for me to keep you safe. His classic cute grin formed on his face, revealing only a few of his nearly perfect white teeth. Oh, you need a reason to keep me safe, I jokingly said, as if he had said something offensive. Well, no. He stumbled over his words. Who? I made it comically clear that I was not believing him. Brian had managed to make me forget all about my terrible experience hours ago. We were laughing and joking around as he pulled into his parking space in his apartment complex. The building itself hadn't been very tall, only about 10 stories. The building itself was nearly completely surrounded by dark Canadian woods. His town wasn't very large, only about 8,000 residents. Beautiful, lush, evergreen forests surrounded the little city, with nearly every house having its own tree in the front lawn. Sparkling white snowflakes gently fell around me as I stepped out of Brian's car. The parking lot was lightly covered in snow before I had managed to make it to the entrance of the building. Brian, like the gentleman he is, carried my luggage from the car into the apartment. He was talking about one of the regular customers at his fast food part-time job when I cut him off. Listen, I said in a hushed whisper. The hairs on my arms stood on end. Goosebumps formed all over my body. Someone was watching us. I could feel it. I scanned the tree line, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. I don't hear anything, Chris. Exactly. It's so quiet. There weren't any noises around. Not a single sound. Only the eerie dead silence. Is it always this quiet? In the middle of the night? Yeah, it is. Brian wasn't making me feel any better. What's wrong, Chrissy? You still spooked? Let's just go inside. I don't like it out here. I clung onto his arm and rushed towards the front doors. Once inside and in the elevator, I told him what I read online. I explained that the absence of any natural noises or wild animals typically means there's a predator around. With his apartment complex close to some dark woods, I wasn't very calm. I also told him how I felt that we were being watched from something in the woods. Babe, your nerves are probably just shot. He held me close to him, trying to calm me down. I promise you're safe here. It's gone. I promise. He drifted off. That night I dreamed that the creature had followed us. I saw from its point of view as it followed our car towards Brian's apartment. I saw as it watched us get out from the car and head inside. And I saw as it crawled into bed behind me, holding me in place. Don't move, it hissed, its hot breath on my ear. I woke up in a cold sweat. Brian was sound asleep beside me, looking peaceful as ever. I went to the kitchen and got myself a glass of water. I put on my warm, fuzzy housecoat over top of my pajamas and stood outside on the balcony. Some fresh air would do me good, I thought to myself. It was 3:20 in the morning, and there I was on the balcony of the 7th floor, contemplating a cigarette. I wanted to quit ever since I had taken ownership of my brothers, but on that balcony I felt as though I had so desperately needed one. Feeling ashamed of myself for even considering one, I threw the only cigarette I had off the balcony. I needed to get a hold of myself before I returned home. I couldn't let Zach see me like this. Gabe would scold me if he were here, I thought. Wiping tears off my face, I looked around the tree line. I was just starting to regain my composure when I noticed something out of place. In the tree line was the deer skull. The horrid creature's body was undoubtedly attached to it. It just stared at me. I whirled around and nearly dove inside Brian's apartment. I slammed the balcony glass door shut and locked it. As I headed to make sure the front door was locked, Brian intercepted me, forcing a scream out of me. What's the matter? Christina. Brian held me by my arms. I wouldn't stop wailing. All that I could get out was, "It's following me," in between the sobs. He held me in a close hug until I was calm enough to explain my nightmare and about the creature I saw mere moments ago. "Stay here," he said as he headed towards the balcony and took a look outside. I watched as he unlocked the door and stepped onto the balcony. A chill went down my spine, but not because of the wintry night air flowing into the apartment. Brian just stood there, staring at one spot. After a long pause, he slowly backed into the apartment, not taking his eyes off the creature outside. I knew he saw it. I knew he believed me. I could see it in his face. His eyes wide with fear, his mouth only slightly ajar. Without looking at me, he said, "The parking lot is in the back of the complex. Get your things. We can't stay here." "Are you crazy? That thing is outside. It's following me." I nearly yelled, panic setting in. I felt as though I was going to vomit. That thing. It told me Brian was in terror. I don't know how, but it told me that it was going to come inside. I gasped, tears streaming down my face. "We have to go," he urged. I grabbed his hand and he grabbed his keys and we rushed out the front door. We ran to the elevator and rapidly hit the down button. I decided that taking the stairs was faster and bolted through the door towards the stairs, Brian following right behind me. Reaching the stairwell, I looked to the bottom before descending the stairs. About halfway down the first flight, I heard heavy tapping coming from the bottom. I leaned over the banister and saw the undead deer creature making its way up the stairs. Brian nearly bumped into me as I spun around and sprinted up the stairs crying and screaming. He followed my lead without question as I headed towards the elevator, doors just beginning to open. We both cramped ourselves into the elevator and Brian rapidly pushed the ground floor button. Just as the double doors slowly closed, we saw the stairwell doorway open and the animal's snout making its way towards us. We held each other, Brian verbally praying and me regretting most of my past life's choices. Ground floor and parking, the elevator dinged, cueing us to make our hasty escape. We ran like our lives depended on it, because in those long moments, they did. On our way to Brian's car, I slipped and fell into the snow. Brian, who was ahead of me, turned around and prepared to help me up. "No, go. Start the car. Go," I yelled frantically as I slowly made my way to my feet. He spun around and ran towards the car again. I took one step forward and fell to my knees, pain pulsing through my ankle. I loudly groaned in pain, clenching my teeth. I managed to get to my feet and half limp, half jog to the car. Just as I closed the passenger door, the front doors of the apartment complex were violently torn from their hinges. The creature held nothing back as it sprinted on all fours towards the car. "Hang on." Brian shifted the car into drive and floored it. Normally, the wintry road conditions would have evoked anxiety in me, but right now I felt as though Brian wasn't driving fast enough. I kept my eyes glued to the rearview mirror, watching the creature gallop towards us, its skinny form seemingly moving in unnatural angles with each step. "Are you all right?" Brian asked of deep concern, his eyes trained on the road ahead. "I think that I broke my ankle. I managed to get out in between breaths." He cursed under his breath. "I don't think we can get you to a hospital with that thing on our asses," Brian thought out loud. "Did you bring your phone?" I asked him. "I'm going to call the police." "Damn it. No, I left mine at the apartment," Brian said plainly. I quietly sobbed as I too had left my phone in the rush. "We are going to die tonight, aren't we?" I said out loud, not wanting an answer. "No, babe, don't say that. Things are going to be fine. We'll make it out of this." "Will we? Will we actually, Brian?" I yelled at him, tears streaming down his face too. He was terrified, just like me, and yet he was trying to protect me and keep me calm. I stumbled an apology in between sobs, but Brian cut me off. "It's gone." He slowed the car to a stop and looked all around. "Where did it go?" "It's gone. Where did it go?" I too began to look around, unease settling in. I'm not sure what was more horrific, seeing the creature pursue us or not being able to see it but feel that it was still there. We sat there in the car for a long while, just looking around desperately. In the distance down the road, I noticed headlights. I pointed them out to Brian, and he flashed his high beams off and on. The car pulled over to the side of the road, and Brian got out to talk to the driver. I bit my lip, not enjoying the idea of Brian getting out of the car. "Please, call the police. We need an ambulance too," I heard Brian talk to the driver. Just as Brian made his way back to the car, the creature came out of the darkness and took him in its grasp. It happened so quickly. He was just gone. Only a few drops of blood on the ground to prove that he was even there. The man in his car across the road screamed and sped off. I sat there, stunned and no doubt in shock. The monster rammed into my passenger side door head first, breaking me from my trance. It broke through the window and shoved its face towards me. I struggled against my seatbelt and repeatedly kicked it in its hollow skull. It caught my leg in its mouth and clamped its jaws down hard. I screamed from the pain, blood pooling around my wounds. I heard the horrific sound of my leg being bitten through as the beast crunched through bone. All I could do was scream. Biting down on my other leg, it pulled me through the window. I screamed for my life, but it was no use. With ease, it had flung me face first into a nearby tree, and everything went black instantly. My entire body seared with pain as blurry images of men and women in police uniforms and rescue uniforms loaded me onto a bed and into an ambulance. I was drifting in and out of consciousness. When I had finally come to full consciousness, I was in a hospital bed and hooked up to countless pieces of machinery. I had a feeding tube and an oxygen tube in me. My arm had four in it, heartbeat monitors attached to my chest. The nurse reading my file gasped when she saw me awake and rushed out of the room. The PA system announced several doctors to where I assumed I was located. Within minutes, the doctors were unhooking the feeding tube and oxygen tube, as I had no longer needed them. "We expected you to be in a coma for at least another month," one of the doctors explained to me after the tubes were removed. "Another month?" I asked before clearing my throat. It still felt as though I had those plastic tubes shoved down my throat. "You were out for 6 weeks. You were in a very brutal car accident. While waiting for the emergency vehicles to arrive, you were attacked by an animal. It was a very horrible scene." I blankly stared at him. "Don't you remember, Christine?" He cocked his head to the side and gave me a quizzical look. It's Christina," I corrected him. "And no, I don't," I lied. I laid there for hours remembering the horrible nightmare that happened to me nearly 2 months ago. My whole body ached and pulsed with pain. I could hardly move. I thought about Brian for the longest time. I assumed he had to be dead, but he had shown up later that night. "I came as soon as I heard that you were awake," he told me as he leaned over and kissed my forehead. "After the creature had attacked me, it went for you. I watched as it threw you against the tree. I tried to pull it off you, but it threw me away. It told me that it wanted you. It told me that you saw something that you weren't supposed to see." Brian explained. By the time the police and ambulances showed up, the creature had already left. I never saw it leave. It was just somehow gone. "I rode with you in the back. The officers recorded it as a bear attack. They didn't believe my story." Brian went on to say that he was administered into the hospital for a day with only flesh wounds and stitches. He said that he and my brothers and parents visited me nearly every day or so. "My parents came?" I asked, stunned. He nodded, giving me a half smile. "In fact, they gave me a call on my way here. They're headed up with your brothers. They said that they'll try to get here before breakfast. When they got the call that you were awake, they pretty much dropped what they were doing and hopped in the car." I teared up and smiled. "What did you tell them about what happened?" "The police told them what they thought happened. I went with it because I want them to like me." I giggled. Then I struggled to sit up. Brian rushed over to give help and sit me up. I reached down to scratch my leg, but I couldn't quite find the spot. "Hey, hon, can you help me? I've got an itch and I can't reach it. I'm too sore to be reaching down." I looked at Brian and he smiled back at me. "Sure, babe. Whereabouts?" My left leg, just below the kneecap. Brian went pale suddenly. What's wrong? I removed the blankets as a wave of adrenaline washed over me. Both of my legs were gone from just above the knees. I was still coping with my new handicap when my younger brothers, accompanied by my parents, rushed into the room and nearly knocked the wind out of me in a big hug each. Guys, I'm okay. I'm all right. I laughed a little out loud from pure happiness. They said you might not wake up. Zach sobbed as he held me close. They were talking to Mom and Dad about having to pull the plug on you, Gabe said grimly. Oh, guys. Doctors aren't always right. Look, I'm fine. Then I looked to my parents, both of them clearly holding back tears. We love you so much, Christina. Don't you ever go thinking otherwise. My mom's voice on the verge of breaking. Come back and live with us, okay? You'll be needing someone to look after you. My father chimed in. Olive Gabe Dash. I started. We've moved back in with Mom and Dad, Gabe said, giving me a warm smile. I looked over to Brian, who gave me a "you should listen to them" look with a smile to top it off. I'll come back home. When they let me out of here, I couldn't finish. I cried of happiness. My parents loved me after all. My parents embraced me in a hug each, and my dad stepped out of the room to talk to one of the nurses. How was the drive up? I asked my mom, wiping a tear from my face. Oh, not too bad. The first few hours there was a little snow, but once we passed through Oshawa, Toronto area, it wasn't too bad. Oh, nice. I trailed off. Oh, Chrissy. Zach grew excited. I saw something really cool on the drive up. Oh, that's right. Go on, tell your sister, my mom encouraged. It was a bear-looking creature, but it was wearing this animal skull. I think it was a deer's skull. And the bear looked real skinny and tall. Isn't that something? My mom looked at me. I just looked to Brian. I knew I was probably as pale as he was in that moment. I didn't see anything, Gabe stated matter-of-factly. I ignored him. Yeah, it was freaky. Gabe missed it. I saw it too. I don't think your father saw it. My mother's voice grew distant as I stared at Brian. Are you okay? You don't look so good. Someone asked me, but I wasn't sure who. Maybe you all should go home early. I'll bring Chrissy back down when she's out of the hospital. Brian said. You all have lives to get back to. Oh, Brian, that's so sweet of you, but we'll pass. We've got a hotel room nearby, and we took the boys off school, my mom said in her fake cheery voice. Mom, I stated in the most serious tone I could muster up. Listen to me very carefully. You have seen something that you weren't meant to see. That thing. It's on its way right now. I teared up. It's coming to find you. And little Zachy. Third story. The Wendigos grants wishes. I killed my dad with an axe. I never knew how my grandfather came to possess the Wendigos, but it was one of the few gifts he gave me, so I didn't want to ask too many questions. I only asked one though, and it seemed relevant enough. Is it real? Tommy, don't bother trying to solve every mystery in life. Just enjoy what's given to you. Grandpa's stare, narrowed and angry, told me that there was a price to pay for inquisitiveness. So I just nodded and palmed the glass gratefully. Grandpa then sat back and told me about how the Wendigo is associated with greed, murder, and cannibalism. Nothing good. That rainy night when he told me about the horrible creature like he had known it all his life is the last real memory I have of him. It was the last time Grandpa visited my parents, and when they went to visit him, they told me I couldn't come. When I asked them why, they gave me the same look that Grandpa gave me, angry, but also strangely hurt, as if I offended them for inquiring at all. My parents took many trips to Grandpa's cabin, always alone, always giving me that odd look. Then one time they came home, seeming almost relieved about something. No matter how much I prodded, they wouldn't tell me. They just wanted me to travel up to the cabin with them next weekend. Being a minor still, I couldn't really say no. Not meaningfully. But they didn't know that I could have secrets too. I never told them about the Wendigo's eye. As I sat on the edge of my bed that night, rubbing the smooth glass against my palm, I wondered why all of a sudden they were okay with me visiting Grandpa. Nothing good can come of this, the Wendigo's voice, guttural and mildly insane, said in my mind. I never heard the creature's voice in all the years I had the eye, not in my waking mind anyway, except for the last several weeks. Do not trust your parents, said the Wendigo. If you go up to that cabin, be prepared. I had a nightmare that night. Didn't remember much of it, but I remember having to wipe the dream blood out of my eyes. What a horrible nightmare, I thought. You know how you can't recall a nightmare, but the general feeling? Well, that's exactly what happened. The nightmares continued throughout the week too, and I couldn't recall much, only the horrible feeling right afterward. The nightmare feeling I experienced the night before my trip to the cabin was especially terrifying. I felt sick to my stomach, throwing up half-consciously. When I glanced up, I saw something that made me think I was still dreaming. If you go up to that cabin, be prepared, the Wendigo said in its guttural, horrifying voice. Its eyes were a stark yellow, piercing into me as I wiped vomit from my mouth. I stared into the pitch-black emptiness of the Wendigos I sought. Your grandfather gave you a gift. Use it wisely. Wish upon a star, or even better, the thing that lets one see into someone else's soul. I lost consciousness again and woke up a short time later, to the silence of the night. I didn't sleep for the rest of it, instead contemplating my wish. The Wendigo never said if I only had one, but I thought about my wish as if I did. As we took the long drive up to Grandpa's cabin, I couldn't get the Wendigo's eye off my mind, playing with it inside my hoodie pocket. I thought about the nature of the eye. The Wendigo said it could let you see into someone else's soul, but for some reason still unknown to me, I didn't care about what they were thinking or feeling. Instead, I used the eye to probe my soul. I realized I was greedy. Money was power, and sometimes you had to do dastardly things to get both. Except what Grandpa said occurred to me again, as if he spoke right into my ear. The Wendigo was associated with greed, among other things. Greed is a gateway drug, Grandpa's voice said to me. He had mentioned this adage to me years ago, and in that moment I didn't really put it together, the seeming inconsistency. He seemed to despise greed, but carried the eye of a being associated with it. Even gave it to his own grandson. I started to get angry, then a numbness flooded me. I didn't really care. I only cared about sating my own greed and contemplating the nature of the eye and my nature. Had I been greedy all along? Or did the eye make me greedy? It seemed a little irrelevant given my current ambitions, yet I still couldn't help think the same thoughts over and over again. Grandpa's voice became a clicking whisper in my ear, repetitive and irritating, and a split second later womb-like and comforting. The drive continued in an awkward silence. We still had several hours to go. I grew increasingly anxious as we left the sprawl of the city and the confines of small sleepy towns. We were headed down a road that narrowed to accommodate the thick lines of trees on either side. I wondered why I was hearing Grandpa so clear now despite the deafening silence of the last few years. Maybe the Wendigo thought I would listen if he sounded like someone familiar. I didn't really know. It seemed to echo not only ancient wisdom but a more recent form. What happened up in that cabin? I thought. And what has been happening up there the last few years? Something strange must have occurred between my dad, mom, and grandfather. The eye burned lightly in my hand, telling me of the darkness I hadn't been privy to, but also politely reminding me that I had a wish to spend. Just the one. I asked it. Just the one, the voice responded. I have some time left, I thought. Don't rush me. I know you're evil. You're trying to shape me. You could throw me out the window right now, but you'll die broke and alone, and you know what's worse? You're wasting your time using me to probe your soul when a wealth of knowledge is just waiting on the other side. It took me until that moment to realize I really missed Grandpa. He was a curmudgeon, dark as hell, spineless as fuck, But he wasn't afraid to explore the dark side of the world, things that were hidden in the darkness that most people cared to ignore. As his gravelly tones faded from my mind, I focused the eye on my parents. My mom seemed fine, filled with pleasant thoughts about me, but my dad radiated such a negative feeling for me that it seriously took my breath away. He seemed to hate me, because none of it made any sense. I always thought my dad loved me, but the eye revealed such a visceral hatred that I was left dumbfounded. Can't kill him yet. My dad's thought pierced straight through my heart. And you know what? Because of the wisdom of the eye, I finally knew my wish. I felt like I had matured by a decade during the rest of the ride to the cabin. In the blink of an eye, I guess you could say, I grew up. No gray hairs or anything, but now I possessed a mind seasoned with experience. As I helped Dad collect firewood, I kept getting the sense that something was off with him. Something was off with me too, so I couldn't really find fault in that perception, but it felt like again he was immensely angry with me. Not even mine. I could hear his thoughts say, in lower, almost demonic tones. He looked right at me when those thoughts popped into his mind, and it occurred to me then that only the negative thoughts of my dad were visible to me. When I focused the eye on Mom, I couldn't find any thoughts at all. She seemed oblivious to the thoughts inside my dad. I kept asking him why we couldn't go into the cabin right away and see Grandpa, and Dad just grunted like he couldn't think of a good reason. Honestly, I was tired of being yanked around by the both of them. They had been very tight-lipped, and even now that we were now supposedly so close to him, what the fuck was going on? My frustration grew. Jaw clenched. I rubbed the Wendigo sign in my hoodie pocket, finally attaining the grit I needed to make my wish. Not even mine. The anger and greed emanating from Dad's thoughts almost overpowered the anger fueling my wish. I wished for the Wendigo to purge the greed in my family to make things whole again. I couldn't get what the creature said out of my mind about greed being a gateway drug. I figured it was best to confront this head on. Dad stared angrily at the eye-shaped glow in my pocket, biting his lip as if he just went mad. You just ruined everything, Tommy. I can't believe I put up with you for so many years. Well, what I learned that day is if you ask the Wendigo, you shall receive. I can't remember if Dad had given me the axe we used to cut down branches, or if it somehow appeared in my hand, but I grasped it anyway, so tightly that my knuckles went numb. Just as Dad lunged, eyes yellow like the Wendigo's, I drove the axe into his head, watching the blood drip down my fingers and forearm. The yellow light faded from Dad's eyes, and I felt as if I could enter the cabin. Something strange had indeed been happening during all those visits. Grandpa said he held the keys to a small fortune, or rather, he had given me the key. I held it firmly in the palm of my hand, watching as Grandpa stared at me with the eyes of the Wendigo. He said that the creature hadn't always been with him, but as the years melted away and Grandpa began collecting a small fortune, it started to take notice. And not just amassing wealth, but how one goes about it. Grandpa killed many people over the years, a bachelor living in isolation, a drug-addicted fool, the demented and easily tricked. But the Wendigo said that wasn't enough. So he picked the bones of the drug-addicted fool clean. When he approached me in the cabin, my mom watching in an almost resigned horror, he told me that the key to his treasure was the eye in my hand. But a virgin eye, one where no wish had been asked, and none had been granted. I told him I did make a wish, that my family be purged of greed. I swear Grandpa looked exactly like the Wendigo then, yellow eyes generating hate like heat from a furnace. Skeletal snout snapping, drool coming from some mysterious eternal hunger. He told me that only a virgin eye could open the trapdoor in his cabin, a room filled with so much wealth I'd never have to work a day in my life again. I still don't know if the dad I had for all those years was my actual dad or not. Mom says yes, he was. Who else could be my dad? We're still driving though, driving far away from the cabin. The words, "not even mine," echo in my head still. I'm angry and feel like I've been cheated. It seems like greed is still alive and well in my family. In me. I can't tell what Mom is thinking. Her eyes are on the road. She says she's taking me to meet someone. My real dad? My thoughts are only partially on that, though as momentous a moment as it will be, I'm still thinking about the eye. Since greed is still alive in me, it hasn't been purged from my family. Of course, a wish took away the eye's virginity, but I'm wondering if the Wendigo is lying to me. The wish hasn't been completed, and who knows what will happen when I meet my real dad for the first time. Will I kill him too once the rage and paranoia fills me again? If I can access the room underneath the trapdoor, I'll be a rich man. I'm thinking that's as equally important as family, and I have decisions to make. Fourth story. This story was shared by you/altballsdeep. They burned down an entire forest to cover up something horrible. For my own safety, I will be using fake names for people and locations as I describe my experience. Whistleblowers often end up dead, after all. I used to live in a small town nestled up in the mountains, surrounded by a famous national forest. Let's call this town Greenville. Being born and raised there, I had an affinity and distinct familiarity with the surrounding mountain and its forest. Douglas, a childhood best friend, would accompany me on countless camping and hiking treks through the numerous trails located near our town. Now here's a disturbing fact you may or may not have known. An absurd number of people go missing in national parks and forests every year. A quick Google search will tell you that 1,180 people have gone missing in national parks between 2018 and 2023. That boils down to almost 300 people going missing every year. Why do I bring this up? Well, over a dozen people have gone missing in the national forest around Greenville in the 20-odd years I lived there. And it's a miracle that Douglas and I did not end up being among those numbers. You see, Douglas and I had a few disturbing experiences in that forest over the years. Back in the summer of 1999, we went out with our dads on a camping trip. Being adventurous and reckless kids at the time, Douglas and I snuck off the main trail and got out of sight from our parents. We spent hours playing hide and seek in the woods, looking at strange plants and poking at anthills. You know, preteen boy stuff. Well, we started to panic when it got dark and we couldn't find our way back to the trail. "Dad, where are you?" We both cried and called out. Soon the sun had dipped beyond the horizon, blanketing the forest in twilight. "Adam, I'm scared," Douglas said, jumping at the sound of an owl hooting in the distance. I took in a deep breath, looking around and thinking of a way to calm my friend down. That's when we heard something ahead of us. It sounded like the footsteps of a large man running across the brush at full sprint. Focusing my attention to the source of the sound, I scanned the tree line and caught a glimpse of a shadow darting between the tree trunks. Whatever made those huge footsteps moved like lightning between the trees, so fast you could blink and miss it. My heart dropped when I realized this shadow creature was zigzagging its way forward, towards where Douglas and I stood. "What the hell is that?" Douglas asked, his voice cracking in panic. Grabbing his arm, I tugged on him and started running in the opposite direction. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." We ran through the forest, weaving between the trees until my lungs burned from the strain of running. I only looked back once, seeing the creature gaining on us at an alarming rate. For a brief moment, I thought I saw glowing amber eyes attached to the creature's blurry and distorted face. By some miracle, we popped out of the forest and arrived at one of the trails. Flashlights were beaming through the tree line further down the trail, and we both sprinted full speed for the lights. At some point, that creature had stopped chasing us. We eventually ran into the people with the flashlights, who happened to be a search party that our dads had rounded up to go looking for us. Needless to say, we were in a lot of trouble and they didn't buy our story of being chased by a shadow monster. The next incident happened on my 21st birthday, back in the fall of 2008. My father took me on a camping trip up in the mountains and brought along a bottle of Jack Daniels to celebrate my legal drinking age. The plan was to set up camp, get drunk but not totally hammered, and maybe hunt some squirrel the next morning with my .22 long rifle. Well, we arrive at the campsite, get everything set up, and all seems to be going normal. That is, until nightfall. I had just downed my third shot of whiskey when a screeching sound wailed out into the cold night air. My dad, who was off relieving himself on a tree just outside the glow of the campfire, laughed in response to the noise. "What's the matter, kiddo? Jack on the rock's too strong for ya." He stumbled back over to the campfire, fixing up the zipper on his jeans. "I didn't make that sound," I told him. He raised an eyebrow before grinning at me, like he thought I was messing with him. Just when he was about to say something, that screeching sound erupted into the night air once again. It sounded much closer than before. "What in the hell?" my dad shouted, looking around at the darkness surrounding our campsite. He rushed over to his tent and brought out his old lever-action hunting rifle and my comparably tiny .22 long rifle and tosses me my gun. "What was that?" I asked, checking my rifle and turning off the safety. He loaded up a round in his gun and brought it up close to his chest, ready to aim. In all the years I knew my old man, I had never seen his eyes so wide and full of alarm. "Boy, I don't know," he said, keeping his head on a swivel. "Been hunting out here for years, and I ain't never heard an animal make a sound like that. Can't be good." I sat by the campfire, my hands shaking and unable to think of anything to say. Then the sound screeched out a third time, seemingly from somewhere right above me in the tree canopy. Taking me off guard, the screech made me jump back in fear, nearly causing me to soil my pants. If I could describe the sound, it had to be a mixture of a dying coyote and the strained vocal cords of a human child screaming in pain. Well, my dad wasn't having any of it. When he heard that sound booming from right above where I sat, he cursed and took aim with his rifle. The blast temporarily lit up the surrounding woods with the muzzle flash and sent a crack echoing through the wilderness. Following the gunshot, I heard a loud thud on the forest floor, as if something heavier than a grizzly bear had just jumped off the highest tree branch. Heavy footsteps followed, indicating something had broken out into a full sprint heading away from our campsite. We didn't get any sound sleep that night despite having some alcohol in us, and luckily the rest of the trip went by uneventful. The final experience I'll talk about before I reveal the truth is a gruesome one, so if you're squeamish, please be warned. A few years ago, a young woman went missing in the woods around Greenville. She was a local of the town, so everyone had come together to form a search party and look for her. That's just what we were about. A small town was a close-knit community, and we looked out for each other. Douglas and I decided to join the search party, and we were assigned to comb through the far northeastern section of the woods. We scoured the woods, calling out that woman's name for hours. "Jessica, are you out here?" She never turned up. Eventually, it got late, and we had to turn back. Even though we brought flashlights along, the search party advised us not to go too far out at night since it could risk more people getting turned around and lost. Remembering the other chilling experiences I had in the forest at night, I had no problem with that stipulation. Douglas, on the other hand, didn't quite agree and indeed grew irritated that we had to pack up and leave before nightfall. You see, Douglas had a bit of a romantic interest in Jessica, so his motivation to find her ran much deeper than mine, which is exactly why he stopped when he saw a small cave nestled between the trees on the side of the mountain. This cave wasn't unusual. There were plenty of them all over the mountain hidden within the forest, which made excellent hibernation dens for the local black bears. For that reason, I adamantly protested when Douglas suggested we go looking in the cave for Jessica. Come on, maybe she took shelter in there. We gotta at least look. He drew closer to the cave, taking out the flashlight and shining it through the maw. At this point, twilight had crept in, and detouring through a possible bear cave was the last thing I wanted to do. "You want to go in there? Fine. I'll stay out here and wait." I gave him a dead serious look. He scowled and turned to enter the cave, calling me a coward and a few other choice names as he entered. Taking a seat on a nearby rock, I waited and kept the flashlight on, pointed at the cave. It grew darker and my anxiety began to rise. What was only a few minutes had felt more like hours. When the silver glint of the full moon began to peek through the tree canopy, I cursed and turned to face the cave. "Doug, are you done looking around yet?" My voice echoed back from the cave. Just when I thought there wouldn't be a response, I heard my own voice speaking back to me. It said the same exact thing, albeit in a much lower, almost choppy and broken-sounding voice. "Doug, are you done looking around yet?" Frozen in place, I didn't know what to think. I heard my echo, and then the voice of something repeating my words back. I could feel my heart exploding in my chest as I turned to examine the forest around me. While I had my back turned to the cave, I heard Douglas scream. Quickly shining my light back to the entrance, I heard his footsteps crashing on the stone as he raced out of the darkness. His breathing had been elevated to hyperventilating levels, and he spoke incoherent nonsense. "Dude, it's horrible. Oh my god, dude." He fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably as he dropped the flashlight. "Well, calm down. Just breathe and tell me what's wrong." He continued crying nonstop, unable to piece together words. I sat there rubbing his back, glancing back up at the cave and wondering what he saw. When his sobbing grew softer, another noise began to grab my attention. It was a wet, uncomfortable, mouth-slapping sound. Think of a big dog chewing on a piece of raw meat. When I realized the sound came from the maw of the cave, I raised my light at the entrance and felt all the blood drain from my body. A tall, humanoid shadow stood inside the cave. Amber eyes locked with mine, and I watched in absolute horror and disgust as long, lanky, and inhuman arms ripped flesh straight off of a dismembered human leg. Blood dripped off the severed body part as the creature took the bit of flesh and stuffed it into a mouth I couldn't even make out on its oblong head. Then I heard that wet, deeply uncomfortable chewing noise as that thing ate the raw human flesh. At some point, Douglas must have noticed the creature because he broke out screaming at the top of his lungs. I screamed with him, and we both ran away as fast as our feet would allow. Fortunately, that thing did not follow. I am now convinced that what I saw in that forest was a Wendigo. You see, after all my traumatic experiences, I've grown an affinity to research the paranormal and the unknown. The Wendigo is a creature known for feasting on the flesh of humans, and seems to best fit the description of what I saw in the forest that day. Now, here's an interesting twist. The Wendigo has long been said to have a weakness against fire, silver, and cold weather. The reason I mention this is because the national forest around Greenville suffered a catastrophic wildfire back in 2021. Since then, disappearances in the area have stopped. But there's more. In my last year of living in Greenville, just weeks before the fire, a group of strange people arrived at our town. They drove all black cars with government license plates. At the time, I was working as a volunteer for the park ranger services. These strange people came to the park ranger office, asked a few questions to my boss, and disappeared off into the woods for hours before coming back and just abruptly leaving. 6 days later, the forest fire that would devastate Greenville and the surrounding mountain would begin. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I firmly believe that the government stepped into a Wendigo crisis unfolding around Greenville. And their solution was to burn it all down. Fifth story. This story was shared by you/Schwy_my_waifu. I'm making a film with my friends at a cabin. They didn't know of the creature that lurks. Hello, I'm Mark, and last summer I had a terrible experience. I'm a student at a small liberal arts college. I am part of a film club and have decided to spend my summer break making a movie with students of my club, also friends of mine. We have rented a cabin in the woods, far from any civilization, to use as our base of operations. So we pack our things and get ready for a road trip, I suppose. Are we there yet? Ashley asked, sounding bored. No, not yet. I replied, trying to hide my own impatience. It's going to be another hour or so before we reach the cabin. Ugh, this is taking forever, Alexander said, stretching his legs. I can't wait to get out of the car and start exploring. Me too, Mary agreed. I'm so excited to start filming for our movie. It's going to be epic. I hope so, I said, feeling a surge of excitement. This is our chance to make something really special. And it's going to be so much fun, Ashley added. We're going to have the best time ever in the woods. We continued to chat and joke as we drove deeper into the wilderness, eager to reach our destination and start our adventure. I miss all of this, our joy to explore the forest. I wish this didn't have to happen to us. Eventually we made it. I swung open the trunk and grabbed 2 duffel bags of our equipment. I believe it was tripods and stuff. Come on, grab some stuff and let's get inside, I yelled, smiling. And they did just that, grabbing some bags too. When we entered, the place looked just as expected. The cabin was small but cozy, with wooden walls and a thatched roof. It had one main room that served as a living area, kitchen, and bedroom. There was also a small loft upstairs where we could sleep. In the center of the room was a fireplace where we could keep warm on cold nights. The windows were covered with curtains, and the furniture was old but comfortable. Despite its rustic appearance, the cabin had all the amenities we needed, including a gas stove, running water, and electricity. We had stocked up on supplies before arriving, so we had everything we needed to make our stay comfortable. Overall, the cabin was the perfect base of operations for our movie-making adventure. We were excited to spend the next 2 weeks there, exploring the surrounding wilderness and creating our masterpiece. Wow, this place is amazing, Mary said, looking around the cabin. I can't believe we have it all to ourselves for the next 2 weeks. It's perfect, Ashley agreed, setting down her bags. We have everything we need here to make our movie. And it's so cozy, Alexander said, starting a fire in the fireplace. I can't wait to relax and unwind after all the driving. Me too, I said, feeling a sense of contentment. This is exactly what we needed. I know, right? Mary said, smiling. We're going to have the best time here. We spent the rest of the day unpacking and setting up our equipment. Okay, let's set up the camera here, I said, pointing to a spot in the corner of the room. It will give us a good view of the whole cabin, and we can set up the lights over here, Alexander said, carrying a tripod over to the opposite corner. It will help us get the right lighting for our scenes, and we can put the microphones on these stands, Mary said, setting up 2 stands near the center of the room. It will help us capture the audio for our dialogue. This is going to be great, Ashley said, smiling. I can't wait to start filming. Ashley is a very cheerful and kind person. I'm glad she was my friend before this stuff happened. We made sure that everything was in place and ready to go. We were excited to start our movie-making adventure, and we couldn't wait to see what we would create. Except, strange things start to happen. We hear eerie noises outside the cabin, and when we look out the windows, we see something moving in the darkness. At first, we brush it off as our imaginations get the better of us. But the next morning, we find strange footprints outside the cabin, and some of our equipment is damaged. Okay, I'm sure there's a logical explanation for this, I say, feeling a bit stressed. Mary scoffs and says, yeah, logical my ass. What are even those tracks we saw? I swear we are leaving tomorrow, that's that. Alexander followed up. Mark, we can do our movie somewhere else. Let's pack up and go. Ashley only nods, not speaking. Fine, okay, let's just go then, I say, sighing. The movie won't be as cool now, but our safety. Tomorrow arrives and we pack up and leave. But as we are loading the car, the thing that has been stalking us reveals itself. It is a Wendigo, a mythical creature from Native American folklore. I actually know a lot about them from a video game. Perhaps you guys know. The Wendigo is tall and gaunt, with pale skin stretched tight over its bones. Its eyes are glowing red orbs, and its mouth is filled with sharp, jagged teeth. We are frozen with fear as the Wendigo approaches us, but we know that we have to do something if we want to survive. So we ran away. We ran to the cabin. I make it in first. Ashley, Alexander, and Mary follow. "What the fuck was that thing?" Alexander asked, his voice shaking with fear, bracing the door. "I think it's a Wendigo, man," I replied, trying to keep my own fear in check. What are we going to do?" "We have to get out of here," Ashley said, grabbing her backpack. "Whatever that thing is, it's not stopping." "But where do we go?" Mary asked, her eyes wide with fear. "We're in the middle of nowhere, and that thing is outside, with our car. We'll figure it out." "God damn it, Mary," I said, my voice breaking upon the pressure of our situation. "I'm sorry. We just have to stay calm and think." "Easier said than done," Alexander muttered, clutching his monopod. We heard the Wendigo again outside the cabin, banging against the door, and it was trying to get in, and it was only a matter of time before it succeeded. "Are you stupid? That isn't going to dent it," I said, voice filled with fear. "We will have to make a break for it." I can't fucking do this," Mary asked, tears streaming down her face. "Mary, calm down," I said. "We have to outsmart it." "Well, we'll have to try." "Oh my God, we're going to die," Mary said, her voice trembling. "We can't fight that thing. It's too strong. We just have to make a run for it," I said, trying to sound calm. I definitely wasn't. "If we don't, it's going to kill us. But we don't stand a chance. It's faster than us for sure," Ashley said, her eyes filling with tears. "It's going to rip us to pieces." "We have to stay calm," Alexander said, his voice shaking. "If we panic, we're finished." "But how can we stay calm?" Mary asked, her voice breaking. "We're about to just run from a monster. What else do we do? Fight it and die," I said, feeling my fear continuously rise. "We have to run for our lives." The Wendigo found one of the windows and broke through that, and we saw our opportunity. I took the car keys and shoved Alexander away from the door. "Fucking run. Just run." We all made a break for it, but I suppose Ashley was too slow. It got a hold of her. I want to say we rushed in there to protect and save her, but we were all too scared and left her for dead. The Wendigo disappeared into the trees with her, leaving us behind to mourn her loss. We are devastated and terrified, knowing that the creature is still out there, hunting us. The three of us went to the car as quickly as we could. Go. Fucking drive," Mary yells at me. I reply frantically, fumbling with the key. "I'm trying. Don't yell at me, asshole." I eventually get it in, and I twist the ignition to on and immediately step on it. Alexander is looking down at the ground, monopod still in hand. We just left her. We left Ashley. I was focused on the road, but I could only assume Alexander was crying. "Alex," I dash. "Don't call me Alex. You got her killed. This movie was your idea." Alexander lashes out and starts shaking me. I swerve the car but manage to keep on the road. Alexander realized the dangers and stopped. "Alexander," I said sadly. We stay silent the rest of the way, immediately filing a missing persons report as no one would believe us. Ashley never showed. I can only assume she's dead. The movie we were making is forgotten, replaced by the horrors of that night in the woods. Me and Alexander don't chat anymore. I did get Ashley killed. I wanted to make that movie, and I knew of the rumors of the monster lurking in the woods. Thanks a lot for watching the video till the end. Subscribe to our channel Horror in Detail. Drop your opinions/suggestions in the comments section, and like the video as it helps with the YouTube algorithm.